Hey, good evening. It's been a month since I last did this. I can give some excuses. There was a doctor strike, then there were floods, which took away my phone. And then the doctor strike affected me. I could not breathe. Let's see. I'm sorry for taking a break. There was some issue with school and all that, so I couldn't really figure out whether you're having cuts or not. But let's see. I got lazy and didn't want to do videos as soon as or as in the frequency I'm used to. First of all, this is in this channel, we are not going to do videos every week. I think we can do, but it's not a must do. So today we are doing the myth of independence and the dependency paradox. So the myth of independence and the dependency paradox from the book Attached by Amir, Levine, and Rachel Heller. I think you know about, we've been mentioning this for a while. So we're going to do the myth of independence again. So in our culture, we believe that each of us should be independent. In the 1940s, there was a theory that whenever a mother had a child who is crying because they need attention, the child should actually be let alone. They should be left to cry for hours. They should be fed on some sort of a formula, fed at this time, from this time, in this quantity of food. And the book written at that time was actually dedicated to the first happy child. Imagine a child who is self-assured, self-dependent, who is happy on their own. So as writers or people who do such materials, we usually warned that what you do now is going to influence the next generation's activities. So we see how writers from the previous age actually influence the generation immediately after, and they are still doing it to this age. I I don't really like feminism as much, but I think it's an example of, let's say, the one side effect of the philosophy of that time. So we have the idea of the strong, independent woman. Someone is strong, first of all. Men tend to be stronger than women on average. It's said that about 90% of men on earth can kill a woman, almost any woman with bare hands. So strong, what do you mean strong? Strong from what? Strong according to what? Strong to do what? So is it, I mean, being being a functional, capable, mature adult, is that the meaning of being a strong, independent woman? Isn't that just basic, common growing up? You can feed yourself, you can buy yourself uh, clothes, you can maybe pay your rent and something like that. Is that being a strong, independent woman, or is that just being, you know, a mature woman? Someone who is not a girl anymore, someone who is a woman, let's say. And then independence. I myself, I believe I need people. I need, in this interaction, for instance, I need you to watch this and probably need me to do videos. And without this arrangement, there would be no YouTube, for instance. You probably need creators, as we are called, and we need people who are going to watch this. And then there are people who made this phone, there are people with the microphone, who made my shirt, who are trying to keep the lights on, who are trying to keep the security. There are kids playing outside, so they need the things to function as they are for them to be stable in where they are. In terms of war, it actually shows that humans are not that independent after all. So the idea of a strong and independent woman. So independent again from what? What is independence? What are they trying to um, differentiate from? Okay, and then strong independent woman. So I mean that's quite something. I don't deny that much of the waves of feminism has actually earned women a lot of things. They can go to school, They can wear trousers, they can wear makeup, they have sexual control, some of them can have abortions. Like, good for you, I guess. So in the same way, in our culture, we tend to scorn basic needs for intimacy, for closeness, while we exalt independence. We think that if I am an independent person, then I'm a good person. And if I'm dependent on anyone, including even God Himself, then there's something wrong with me. Even in relationships, we seek to still be independent, which beats the question, what is the point of being in a relationship then if you wanted to retain your independence? Okay, so we're going to uh, launch into that for a while. I usually try to have few paragraphs, but I have 2 pages written out. I hope it will suffice. So let's begin. There was a video program on a TV program between couples. Couples were trying to compete for some mega prize. So they were supposed to go through obstacle courses. So there is the story of Karen and Tim. These were the favorite couple according to the TV series. Everybody was watching for them to win, but towards the end, they actually lost to another couple. Why? Because whenever Karen, it was Karen and Tim, whenever Karen was trying to reach out to the arms of Tim in a difficult situation, Tim would pull away because he'd believe that he was being too close. He was allowing Karen to have her every whim fulfilled. Basically, in attachment theory, in attachment literature, Tim was an avoidant person, and Karen was an anxious person. I usually think again that much of the theories, people theorize that we don't need women, we don't need men, tend to be avoidant, as studies show that many of the people who are actually single and unmarried or divorced tend to be avoidant. Again, you remember that we teach here that, or we teach from this theory is that secure people should or ought to date secure people and the insecure people. But those who are insecure, the anxious and the avoidant and the disorganized or the fearful avoidant or anxious avoidant, should date those who are secure. Okay, and if by chance you're married to someone who you are diametrically opposed, it's actually possible to change your attachment style in 4 years through willful effort and study. So from the book now, you're told attachment theory teaches us that Karen's basic assumption that she can and should control her emotional needs and soothe herself in the face of stress is simply wrong. So we live in a culture where you're told that you should actually focus on yourself. You should actually focus on being the best there can be, being the person who does not depend on anyone else. So Karen, she assumed that the problem was that she was too needy. I think you've heard about this before. Neediness, codependency, and all that. Codependency is actually a thing for, should I say, people who have issues with drugs, drug addicts, alcohol addicts. So for the most part, many of them tend to be codependent to their substances. So they usually try to break them. But now codependency, just like narcissism, has broken out into the public and is used whatever which way, and often to the detriment of everyone else. So she assumed that the problem was that she was too needy, but research findings support the exact opposite. Getting attached means that our brain becomes wired to seek support of our partner by ensuring their psychological and physical proximity. We're actually wired to be attached to other people. In a way, we are wired to be dependent. We are not wired to be independent. For this case, I'm going to bring in one of my favorite authors, who is Stephen Covey, from the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He teaches that if there are two companies, one needs to be independent on its own, and the other needs to be independent. Then when they merge, they can be interdependent. So also for human beings, at least there should be some level of maturity in each of us, so that when we merge, it's we are used to each other. What the psychology teaches, though, is that there is actually dependence. If interdependence is dependence, then that's correct. But if I have to be full first of all, if I have to be complete first of all before I meet my partner, then that's impossible. I usually think the reason why many people don't really date, apart from all the cultural deterioration as some people claim, is actually an issue with philosophy. You find someone is maybe good looking and they have the capacity to function in the real world, but they believe that they are not meant to get married, or marriage is for fools, or you're going to get divorced anyway and stuff like that. So I think it's an issue with the person himself or herself, and not so much about society. My view again, I believe so much in personal responsibility. You cannot blame not getting married on society. That's ultimately your own decision. If you have the wrong philosophy, then you have a chance, or you had a chance to educate yourself to have a better philosophy. My view. So if our partner fails to reassure us, we are programmed to continue our attempts to achieve closeness until they do. For those of us who've grown up near children, whenever a child is denied that which they want, they engage in something called protest behavior. In fact, there's something I'm coming up to next. Whenever a child is placed in a room where there's a mother or a caretaker and they're left to play alone, they're going to play as long as the mother is within contact or is within visual field. But if the mother leaves, the child stops playing, bangs on the door, calls out frantically, and until the mother comes back or until the caretaker comes back. And when the caretaker comes back, then that's the only time they're going to resume play, and not before that. So even for us as adults, we have that protest behavior. Whenever we are wired to our partners, we are bound together. As the Bible says, and two shall become one. We are one. You are one with your partner. So trying to become again two is a philosophical impossibility. So, paragraph 2, attachment principles teaches that most people are only as needy as their unmet needs. I think this is important to know. So, we usually blame. I've been reading books about addicted people, addicts, and all that. And for the most part, these are people who are seeking to assuage great pains in their souls. The cause of addiction, for the most part, is actually toxic shame, or is shame. Shame is the belief that I as a person, I am flawed fundamentally. I am a problem. You are the problem. We are the problem. They usually say again we did this in a video before, when the major difference between a complaint and a critical remark is, a complaint is, you didn't call me yesterday, so you suck. Let's say you didn't call me yesterday, so you're this and this. Or a complaint is, you didn't call me yesterday, I'd prefer that you call me more, or you tell me why you didn't call me yesterday. So a complaint is based on the problem. A critical remark or a criticism is based on the person himself. So when you call somebody needy for wanting to call you, if you're not avoidant, for the most part, we have imbibed the social mantra of independence, which again, as we're going to show here, is false. We are actually bound together to the other person. In fact, we form something called a physiological unit, where my partner's heart rate is actually determined by mine, and the converse. Her heart rate and my heart rate are bound together. So attachment principles teach us that most people are only as needy as their unmet needs. We said again in the love languages series that when people feel loved, they tend to be happy. It's not that you should be happy on your own, then go back to finding love. It's really laughable when you hear people say, I've been in therapy for 10 years, so now I deserve a relationship. You're like, You could have actually gotten into a relationship, then go for therapy if that was needful at all. So this theory of, leveraging yourself to the best possible you can be, and then finding a partner. There's a verse in scripture, it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. But our understanding, at least in our actions, is seek ye first all these things, then add God on top. So for the most part, we believe that relationships are a gift to those who, are good essentially, which isn't really true. Relationships are more of, it's about relating to the other person as they are. Yeah. Of course, you're expected to improve over time if you have flaws, but relationships are not a marketplace. It's not come in the best way you can be, then we shall make something work out. Come as you are, we'll know your flaws, we'll know everything you have, then that way we can forge a way forward. So when emotional needs are met, and the earlier the better, they usually turn their attention outward. This is sometimes referred to as, in attachment literature, as the dependency paradox. A paradox is something which is the opposite. When let's say you turn something this way, the opposite happens. So people are as needy as their unmet needs. But whenever those needs are met, people tend to now venture out into the world. Let's say how I did these videos, for instance. I grew up being told that my voice was really low. Today it's low because I had hay fever or flu, and it's been a while since I did this, so my voice is maybe slightly shaky. But I did this because my friends actually told me that I don't stammer. I used to stammer when I was young. I used to stammer badly, the kind of stammer where you entire body is shaking, you have to hit things. There's familial stutter in our home. So some people stutter, my uncle stutter. So there's a reason to it. If I want to keep stuttering, I will. And whenever I'm nervous, I actually stutter. But I remember reading a book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And they say, in the worst case of stuttering, whenever you tell someone who is stammering to actually stutter willfully, then out of nowhere, they suddenly can't stutter. It's like sex, let's say. If somebody tries to achieve a climax, they never achieve it. But if they surrender themselves to the other person, then it's actually way easier to achieve a sexual climax that way. It's the same way also. You cannot pursue happiness and success. These are things which happen by doing the right things. And there are people who try to get into relationships by gimmicks, by personality tactics, by game, let's say. You can do that. You can get someone to talk to you that way, but you can only maintain a relationship by basic goodness. There's a book by Ellen White called Prophets and Kings. Also, the chapter on Nebuchadnezzar, it's called True Greatness, says that true greatness is true goodness. So no matter how smooth of a speaker you are, maybe like me or worse or better, you can't maintain a relationship by smooth speaking. You have to be real, as they say. You have to wake up in the morning without your makeup, and that's the person your partner is supposed to love. So it's you essentially. So if you're flawed as a person, then it should be shown. Okay, it will come out someday. So whenever people's emotional needs are met in a relationship, then they venture out. Okay, so again back to my pet peeve, let's say, the strong independent woman. It's more like find a place, then all the other things will come to you. Let's say there's this phenomenon Jordan Peterson speaks about. Women tend to focus on their careers when they're young because of they're told that the one thing you should focus on the most is your career. Your career should be the most important thing to you. Cooking for your husband, cooking for your children, I don't know, is being a slave, it's being toxic masculinity, patriarchy, all these things. And then when they finally reach 28 or so, they discover that their friends are having families. And suddenly their most important goal in life is to actually have a relationship. they actually quit really high paying jobs just to go home. So in a way, I think, is feminism a lie? What do you think? Maybe we should write about this someday, or maybe dedicate a video to this. Sorry, I'm being hard on the same because I think it's maybe important to me. I have sisters, 3 sisters. So if they fall for this philosophy, it can be a problem to them and maybe to me. Okay, so this is sometimes referred to as the attachment, as the dependency paradox. The more effectively dependent people are on one another, the more independent and daring they become. So if you're dependent in an effective way, if let's say you're in a stable relationship, then you're able to dare greatly, you're able to venture into the world with more freedom, with more ease, with more even temerity itself, or audacity, if you can say. Audacity means reckless boldness which is careless. Let's say there's a machine gun outside of you, and you're running outside bare without a jacket. Okay. So culture scorns basic needs for intimacy, for closeness, while exacting independence. I think we've read this. So what you're speaking about is against that. It's actually impossible to be independent in a loving relationship. In the world, you can be, but you need someone to depend on first for you to venture out that way. If we've seen this over and over again, you can have a very good doctor. As soon as they divorce, their work goes down. What do you call that? Okay, so the study came about by Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby. They brought the attachment theory in kids into light, and then they shared that just as nutrition is important to children, so is attachment to a partner, or to a parent, or to a caretaker. Back then in the 1940s, people used to teach that your children should actually be on their own, as we mentioned before. And we see the effects now. We still have this. For the most part, many books on self-help teach that you should have as much money so that you don't need money from anyone else. And the answer is, or the proposition is absurd. You're never going to reach a point where you have enough money for all your wants, for all your needs. Immediately you make $1 billion, you're going to need a plane, and planes cost a lot. And if they break down, they cost way more to repair. So we 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 for the most part believe in the codependency myth, where we believe that we should not be enmeshed with people, and then that favorite word, we need boundaries between me and other people. Yes, you need boundaries between me and maybe some stranger I met somewhere, but with me and my girlfriend, with me and my wife, what do you mean boundaries? Those are two people living the same life. They are one according to biblical standards. So the notion that you can be in a relationship and still be independent is, I mean, what do you call that? A paradox. So we said we form a physiological unit. Our partner regulates our heart rate, our respiratory rate, our stress hormones, or our hormones in our blood. That studies show that actually, if somebody is sick and they get close to their partner, they tend to feel whole faster. I think that's why in African countries, in our countries, in the big hospitals, a patient is allowed to sleep with a relative in the same bed. I remember there was a time my grandfather was sick, and you're allowed to do that. You actually spend time with your relative in hospital. In white countries, that's not allowed, and it's something they are trying to copy from us, or to learn from us. So dependence is a fact. It is not a choice or a preference. You don't choose whether to be dependent on your boyfriend or your girlfriend. In fact, immediately you choose a boyfriend, your brain assigns your partner, or your lover, or your spouse as your secure base. If they're not competent enough to be a secure base, you're going to engage in protest behavior. Your work is going to go down. Just as in the chapter, there's a lady called Tamara. She was a very high-functioning lady, but then she fell in love with someone called Greg. Greg was avoidant, Tamara was anxious. And for anxious people, anxious and avoidant people, the more anxious people try to push in, the more avoidant people run away. So just like the child is not going to stop until the parent comes into view again, so did Tamara do. She actually deteriorated even professional life for as long as Greg was running away. So you're getting what I'm saying. So there was a study by Dr. Cohen and other people. So the study demonstrates that when two people form an intimate relationship, they regulate each other's psychological and emotional well-being. If you've been in a relationship, I think you know this. If your partner is sick, you actually tend to be sick yourself. It's a good case of social proof, let's say. Their physical proximity and availability influence the stress response. In fact, in times of need, in times of danger, you actually want to hold each other together. You see this with your siblings, with your parents, if you come from such families. How can we then be expected to maintain a high level of differentiation between ourselves and our partners if our basic biology is influenced by them to such an extent? If our heart rates, if we are wired to them, if we are almost sort of bound to each other by the hip, how can we then claim to be independent, to be differentiated? The statement by the hip brings to mind this. Does that mean then that you should give up your entire life for a relationship? And the answer is not exactly. But when you're bound to when you're in a good relationship, then now you can venture outside. It's not venture outside, then come have a good relationship. I was heavy on the womanist movement, the women liberations movement, but then also men believe the same thing. There's something called red pill, migdo, all these things where they're like, focus on yourself, and then you'll meet women at the end of the line. You're like, no. There are boys in high school who have good relationships than these men. And then the question is, in a relationship, you don't really need money to maintain it. You need, what do you need? Attachment styles, love, some basic information, the desire to want to love and to be loved, let's say. It's not, if money buys relationships, well, why not get the most amount of money then let us see how that takes you. Okay. Once we choose someone special, once we choose to have a partner, powerful and often uncontrollable forces come into play. This is automatic. When you have a girlfriend, there's a time of the night you're going to call them because you're used to having those sequences. When you get up in the morning, you want to text them. It's not, these people usually claim that you should have communication between spouses. Whenever communication is mentioned as something which you need a relationship, the relationship is failing because people in love actually seek out each other a lot, even if they're introverted like me. You're going to want to talk to the person, probably when the first person to talk to in the morning and probably the last person in the evening. These are things you look for. But then when relationships are failing, people are like, communicate more, open up more. It's true, but usually call these out. They usually say in engineering, do not repair a system which is working well. So people bring in communication, I don't know, talks, I don't know, therapy when things are going away, when things are going awry. But when things are normal, you don't really need all these things. Communication is automatic when you love the other person. So new patterns of behavior kick in regardless of how independent we are and despite of our conscious wills. Despite how much you decide that you don't love the other person. I usually see this in avoidant people. They're like, I don't want to be too close to my girlfriend or boyfriend. And you're like, yeah, let's wait. So once we choose a partner, there is no question about whether dependency exists or not. It always does. I hope you're clear about that now. Dependency is something which is automatic. You don't get to choose or not to choose. So it turns out that the ability to step out into the world on our own often stems from the knowledge that there is someone beside us whom we can count us, and this is the dependency paradox. We've said this again and again. our ability to be functional in the world is actually dependent on ourselves being actually dependent on someone, finding someone who is competent and capable, who is a secure base. I'm going to use another example. In therapy, they teach that, well, in case of, let's say, sexual abuse or rape, the biggest thing which makes a difference in that is actually telling someone that you've been abused. It makes the greatest difference. Just telling someone, not even getting therapy, just telling someone. And then now what makes a greater significance, let's say 20% significance, is telling a compassionate witness. Someone's like, oh, sorry that happened to you. Compared to telling someone, they're like, what are you doing? Where were you? Why did you take yourself to that room and something like that? Or why were you weak? You should have been stronger. Let's see. I have helped people who've been sexually abused, so those stories sound absurd. I've read books on the same. We're going to do a series on that maybe when you get more courage, let's say. So, but then the best case scenario is finding an enlightened witness, someone who actually knows about sexual abuse and they have studied the psychology of it and how to help you. So, an enlightened witness who is also compassionate and who is willing to listen to you. So, you're getting 3 in 1: someone to listen to, someone who is compassionate, and someone who is enlightened about your situation. So, in the same case, if you want to venture into the world, probably maybe not try to be strong independent, maybe try to be strongly dependent, and then you can be independent in the world again. That's the gist of what you're saying here. So in one sentence, if you can sum up the attachment theory, it is, if you want to take the road to independence and happiness, first find the right person to depend on and travel it down with them. Again, if you want to take the road to independence and happiness, first find the right person to depend on and travel it down with them. So there is the notion of the right person. If I'm anxiously attached, which is no fault of my own, and I date someone who is avoidant, the more I try to go to them, the more they run away. So that's not the right person for me. Okay, the right person is, think about it. Why is infidelity such a bad thing? Because you're actually breaking my secure base. I thought I could trust you. I thought I could turn to you at any moment. I have a girlfriend, and sometimes she calls at 3 a.m. at night. And if I was away, I'd be like, no, this is too much. Like, can't you fix your own issues? But I know just one call and she'll be able to sleep again. And when I'm sick myself, I'm going to call at that time of the night and she's going to pick up. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Okay, so the same situation test. I'm speaking really quickly. The same situation test. There's a child, Sarah and Kimi. So we mentioned this again. Whenever we take a child to a place which is new, a strange situation, and then leave them to play with toys, they're going to explore the toys. They're going to play with every toy, or I don't know, just explore, as long as the mother is in the room. So for the most part, the mother is usually instructed to leave the room quietly without the child noticing. And immediately the child sees that the parent has left the room, they immediately become disquieted. They immediately become frantic. They bang on the door. They call out the mother's name. They cry. They engage in what is called protest behavior. Okay, and when the researcher really tries to calm down the child refuses to be calmed down. It's like the way David says in the Bible that we refused to be comforted because we had lost, Jonathan and Saul. How are the mighty fallen, if you know that verse? So also in adult relationships, there is that thing. There is protest behavior. So if my girlfriend calls me, or if my mother calls me, I think I can use my mother's case. There's a time I lost my phone. I live in Nairobi, so sometimes there are thieves. So I lost my phone, and then my mother could not find me. So she called me all night, and then I thought my dad was secure. My dad called and found my phone off, and he also called over and over and over and over. So that's protest behavior. Of course, I found the phone. late in the day, or my friend came in, I used his phone to call home, then I got a phone in the mail the next day. So that's protest behavior. There was also a time last week when my girlfriend and my sister were calling me at night. My phone was on airplane mode, and they call, you think they'd wait for the message to come back that the person you're trying to reach is now available. But they keep calling and calling and calling and calling. And I do the same also when I don't find them. That's protest behavior. So we are basically united with people. We are meant to be together, our family members and all that. So again, so that's called a secure base. So our brain assigns our partner the task of being our secure base. That's something which happens automatically. You don't get to choose it or not. You don't get to be independent in a relationship. So our brain assigns our partner the task of being our secure base, the person we use as an emotional anchor and a safe haven, the one we turn to in times of need. If I'm hungry, I don't have money, I won't call the government to give me food first. I'll call the people I know. Okay? When our partner is unable to meet our basic attachment needs, we experience a chronic sense of disquietude, which in medicine is called malaise. Malaise is not fatigue, it's just a feeling of being sick. Anxious people know this. When you can't get your person, this is the way you can't go to work. You just are. I am secure myself, and I know when I can't get my girlfriend, it's kind of a dull day. But when they come back, as soon as I call them, I complain a bit. Then, yes, in a few moments you're smiling again. So when our partner is unable to meet our basic attachment needs, we experience a chronic sense of disquiet and tension that leaves us more exposed to various ailments. So studies show that if I have a high hypertension, high blood pressure, and I'm in a bad marriage, I'm very likely to die very quickly. There's a Harvard study. It's called stress-induced cardiomyopathy. So heart sickness, let's see, heart heart sickness induced by emotion. So that people actually get heart diseases because of bad relationships. And if I have a good relationship with my partner, with my wife, spending time with them actually reduces my blood pressure. So you don't need your partner for emotional needs alone. You need them for emotional, psychological needs, and your physical needs. In a word, having a bad partner kills you faster, and having a good partner lengthens your life. Some studies show that actually trusting strangers adds about 12 years to your life, while exercise adds about, 3 years or 4 years. Check your pick. Anyway, thank you for listening. We're not going to do, I think, anxious avoidance style, then secure, then maybe that. And then we shall see what next to do. I have cats, so I might not do this every time, but we will see. Have a good day.